Welcome back to another episode of the Max Turn Podcast. Kyle Stitch here alongside James Finch. And today we, start our off-season recap mode. So we don't know if this is going to be one episode, could turn into a second, depending on how our discussion goes. So this is definitely going to be a recap of kind of around the draft through the start of free agency. And then if this spills into a second, we'll be doing 2 episodes on that. If not, we'll probably start to do some level of looking ahead, looking at needs still to be filled, stuff along those lines. So we appreciate you listening. Max Turn Podcast available on all major podcast platforms. Our content, including our contract projections, are available on X at AFP Analytics. Same thread on Blue Sky and Threads as well. Appreciate if everyone who has contributed and anyone who will continue to contribute. Buy me a coffee to support our work. That can be found on our link tree and everything at those handles. I think that's about all the promoting we need to do. You handled free agency while I rode rides at Disneyland. So I guess I caught up, but you're the expert here.
Wow. Yeah, I suppose, but honestly, when there's a flurry of signings, sometimes you forget some of them even happened.
That's yeah. So so maybe me waiting for Indiana Jones ride and catching up on signings. Maybe that has me more informed or something. Not a Disney, not sponsored by Disneyland or anything, but hey Disney. But if you do want to sponsor us, we're open to that. I think both of us would take a free vacation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't want to speak too freely for you there, but anyways. I was also in LA on the ground for the draft, had some meetings with people, so learned some things, shed whatever insight I feel comfortable shedding. I don't think it's going to be a whole lot, but learned some things. So I was doing some work too, gathering some insights as well. And being out west allowed me to handle some of those late night trades and signings that came in. So maybe one of us will just have to move to the West Coast so we can have 24/7 coverage, basically, or Europe. One of the two
That
places.
would be good.
Yeah.
Expand our audience a little bit there.
Yeah. Those would be under considerations. If you would like us to pursue those endeavors, buy me a coffee on our link tree. Anyways, into the signings. I think I want to go back right before the draft. Probably one of the biggest moves of the offseason so far, maybe the biggest. JJ Peterka from Buffalo to Utah ends up signing a 5-year 7.7. I think, and there was a little change on that, but just 7.7.
Yep.
5 years, 7.7 per year.
Jersey number.
Yep. And then, so he was traded to Utah in exchange for Michael Kesselring and Josh Stone. I know I'm going to say Shane Doan at one point here, but your initial reaction when that happened was?
A little underwhelming for Buffalo. Ultimately, could kind of check off the boxes of what they were looking for, a forward in return and a top 4 defenseman. And I think the optics of it aren't great because it's 2 players who aren't for sure solidified, proven in the roles that you would hope in return for Peterka.
I was probably painting. I saw Sabres X going off.
My opinion is not nearly as dramatic as a lot of Sabres fans. At the time.
I was posting break. I was trying to pump the brakes. I mean, me and my 400 followers. If you want to follow me or James, our handles can be found through the @AFP Analytics handle very easily. But I was trying to kind of post Like, it's not, it's light. It's light. But
Yeah.
the players they got back are, I think, sneaky good, have the potential to be sneaky good, very good fits for that roster. Michael Kesselring should be a tremendous top 4 right shot D, whoever he does end up playing with, probably Owen Power. But even Dowling, same thing. But with Power, the two would be massive, first off, but excel in kind of zone denials as well as breaking out of the zone. Like, one of Kesselring's strengths is kind of controlled zone entries, and then through the neutral zone, and then even into the opposing zone. So he being able to work off of Owen Power doing that, Power also excels. I think that's going to be a really good fit. Josh Stone will be interesting. His kind of underlying expected goals numbers, Corsi numbers were very, very good. I think tops on Utah last year, but he was playing in a very sheltered, low minute role. So I guess there's a question of how high up in the lineup can that work and still translate well. But I think we'll see how that turns out. I know Peterka 30 goal scorer, but I don't want to bash players here, but the fact that you want out after only a couple years, and he and his agent made it very clear he wanted out, maybe not publicly, but privately did. If you're kind of setting that precedent, I don't entitlement might be a little bit strong of a word here, but if you're kind of coming out that young, that has the potential to rub some people in the industry the wrong way. And even some of his on ice, so again, he's really good at scoring goals, but there are some clear deficiencies in the defensive zone that, through 2 coaches, well, plus AHL time with the Sabres organization, so kind of 3 coaches, the commitment to the defensive end didn't really ever come. And a lot of the goals were coming in bunches, and a lot came playing with some of Buffalo's top players as well. So I'm not trying to say that he's a bad player or bash by any means, but there might be a little overvaluing of Peterka as well by the Sabres fan base, and some around the industry maybe don't see the exact same. They might see the potential, but also have cause for concern for all those reasons I just laid out. Again, I'm not trying to defend the trade here by any means, because I will maintain the return seemed light.
Yeah. I would say, so I already mentioned how, or kind of what my initial reaction was. A little bit underwhelming, even though they kind of got back a couple pieces that would check off some boxes. Kesselring was a top 4 defenseman at times this past season due to injuries, but with everyone healthy in Utah, he was more of a bottom pair guy. That said, in those bigger minutes, he looked real solid. Looking, and this could change, but looking at the offseason so far, Noah Dobson was traded. Clearly the best right shot defenseman traded. Supposedly Buffalo was interested and in on him, and there was not a willingness. Whether a deal was going to get done or not, there wasn't a willingness by the player to sign with Buffalo. So cross his name off. The other right shots that were traded, Jordan Spence, Connor Clifton from Buffalo, and Connor Timmins, who Buffalo got. So Kesselring, this is sort of the same exercise that everyone had to do last offseason when the Sabres acquired Ryan McLeod. Kesselring was potentially the best right shot defenseman available to the Buffalo Sabres. And I only say potentially because there's still some offseason to go here. it's very possible he ends up being the best option traded, and they got him. So even though he isn't the 100% for sure top 4 right shot defenseman, I think that should be looked at as a win, just being able to acquire him. Josh Doan is young, looked very good, albeit in fourth line minutes. But that shows potential. He was very good both ends of the ice, fourth line minutes. So even if he can take a little bit of a step and he's a really good third line forward, that's pretty good. If Kesselring hits, you've got a top 4 right shot and a potential third line two-way, maybe a middle 6 winger for Peterka, who was a top 6 winger, scored a lot of goals, but like you said, had some other issues in his game. This could end up being a very good trade for both teams. Ultimately, it's an upgrade up front for Utah, and they have a lot of defensemen, so this was something that they could do fairly comfortably. And for Buffalo, I mean, I would say biggest need this offseason was a right shot defenseman, and you check that off in this trade.
So you laid out the other right shots. I just kind of want to expand that point real quick, and then we'll move on. There have only been if you're a Sabres fan, you want the Sabres to improve their NHL roster. Can't blame you.
Yeah.
There have only been 2 trades. You mentioned one, Spence to Ottawa. The other being Matthias Maccelli to Toronto, that have been picks for NHL players, basically only picks for NHL players. I'll give you Declan Chisholm to Washington for, I think, Chase, like a minor league borderline
AHL defenseman and a 4th round pick.
There, yeah.
And they also had to send a 6th round with Chisholm.
But those are really the only, you're not subtracting from your NHL roster to improve your team type of moves that have been made, trades that have been made this offseason. So I don't want to say that you have the right as a Sabres fan to be upset, frustrated, whatever you want with the return. You can feel it's light. I feel it's light. But I think they might have done better than a lot of the reaction was. And I think that did cool as kind of analytics Twitter posted stuff about guys, realizing that, this actually might not be that bad of an idea. But yeah.
It's just, there was a lot of build up there of this is the top forward to trade for, pretty much. Going to get a big contract. Top 6, scores a lot of goals. So I think it just blew up into a big story, and maybe that raised the expectations a little too much. And like I said, I acknowledge the potential issues with the return. But ultimately, looking at what they are, looking at what else has happened throughout the league this offseason, it's possible they actually did a very good job.
I guess someone listening might also push back. Oh, well, Columbus acquired Charlie Coyle and Miles Wood for, basically just picks. I mean,
Gavin Brindley's a good prospect.
Yeah, and they also, that was a cap dump move kind of from the other team too. Anyways, maybe not one other, but the other big trade you alluded to, Noah Dobson. I think we should hit on that quickly. I'm surprised the Islanders moved him, but I also would say the Islanders had a very good draft and I've liked what they've done. I still don't know if I love them making this trade, but I think everything they've done with the pieces they got back and then how they use those pieces and subsequent moves, I've been a big fan of. So if Matthew Darche wants to reset the things just a little bit, this was a really good first step.
Yeah, it's kind of I guess, like you said, it's the first step. It's his first big stamp on the Islanders. I kind of agree. I don't necessarily love giving up Dobson, especially like if I was going into the Islanders front office and looking at that team, I'd kind of be identifying a lot of the older players. Okay, maybe we can move some of these guys out and become a younger team, maybe change up the style a little bit. Dobson would have fit what I'd be looking to do, and is a first pair right shot defenseman. So tough to give that up, but like you said, they did a good job with the return that they got, those picks. It's great for Montreal because that's
Yeah.
that. I mean, I can't say it's was for sure their biggest need. I think I'd say it's tied. They could really use a 2C. Their top four looks a lot better now. Um, Dobson, Hudson, Matheson, Gooley is pretty solid. And of those four defensemen, Dobson is the only right shot. So that was very important for them to bring in. They had the space to make it work. From their perspective, I love it.
I agree. I've been connecting Aaron Ekblad to I
Yep.
had been connecting Aaron Ekblad to Montreal all off season because I thought that top four right shot D was their clear need. So yeah, I think it was great for Montreal. Don't want to gloss over Emil Heinonen going to the Islanders too. He's a really nice like third line winger.
Yeah.
Really really solid analytics and everything underlying numbers. So don't want to gloss over that. That's not like a pure throw in either. That's definitely a player with value.
Yes.
Dry head on the Coyle Wood cap dump from Colorado.
I like it for Colorado. It opened up possibilities for them this offseason, especially once they were able to bring back Brock Nelson. They can still kind of run down the middle with McKinnon, Nelson, and Ross Colton.
And or Jack Drury, depending on how
Well,
you
Jack Drury is probably
fourth
fourth
line,
line
but
to
yeah,
continue
yeah.
the list of names. So they're fine at center. I don't necessarily love it for Columbus. I think acquiring Coyle is fine. I would have, and I guess maybe this is just an option that wasn't really on the table at the time or really in free agency. But I would have liked to see them shoot a little bit higher than Coyle because I think ideally he's a 3C right now. And I don't know, I look at Boone Jenner and kind of think of him in the exact same role moving forward. So I don't know. I see it for Columbus as like Coyle can be a good player still. That's fine. I just don't know if that type or that level of player is what I would have been looking to bring in.
One of my buddies who does listen to this podcast on occasion, he texted me, you'll know who you are. Direct quote on this trade. How many third and fourth liners do the Blue Jackets need? And I think that's a
Yeah,
great way to
like
put it.
yeah, it's like okay, cool, good player, but is that what you needed to do? I don't really think so.
No, no. I think for both of the, well, I mean, Columbus has just more players. Colorado, the one criticism I will say is they haven't really used the cap space.
Right.
They brought in Brent Burns. We'll maybe get a little bit more into that, but that was a bonus heavy contract that can kind of push the money down the road or the cap hit down the road at least. So I don't know. We'll see if Colorado has something else up their sleeves, but I don't love trading those guys away because they're not bad players.
Right.
Like Colorado still could have used them. But
Yeah, if they don't do
so
anything with the money, then it's kind of like what was the point of
yeah,
that?
yeah.
Yep.
Let's see. Kind of just scrolling through pick trades. We've covered the Connor Clifton to Pittsburgh for Connor and Timmins, the Connor swap.
Yep.
That's a win for Buffalo, probably.
Yeah, I think Timmins is an RFA. He should come in cheaper than Clifton.
As if the Sabres won't have cap space.
Yeah, but just from a value standpoint, from I guess a contract value standpoint, you should be getting the cheaper player. From a performance standpoint, you are probably getting the better player. You had to move out a second. I think there were some Sabres fans who were a little, I guess I'll say they weren't thrilled about that, which
Especially on the heels of the Peterka trade.
I kind of get it to an extent. Like, it's multiple years in a row of trading ultimately a higher second round pick for someone who is likely in the bottom part of your lineup. That might just be the price. It was also a move that you, again, gave up a more pricey defenseman who is not as good.
It's kind of a mistake. I mean, it's another kind of admitting a mistake and then kind of having to cover up the mistake from the Sabres front office. But with all that said, Buffalo got better.
Yes.
Their NHL roster got better with this trade.
Yes.
I think what also hurt or added to the frustrations, they see as Sabres fans see Jordan Spence go to Ottawa just minutes later for a third round pick.
Yeah.
Sabres don't like small defensemen.
No, look at their roster.
Yeah, they don't like small defensemen. Yeah. I've learned that over the years. So they weren't going to get Spence. Like, it just wasn't going to happen.
And I think looking at what Spence was traded for, that's kind of a league-wide opinion right now.
Yeah. No one in the league really sees him more than a bottom pair defenseman.
And maybe he gets a chance in Ottawa, but they weren't going to give up a big return. There's a reason Peterka was traded for Kesselring and Doan, and then Spence went for a third-round pick.
Yeah. If the Sabres had wanted Spence, they probably could have gotten him for Peterka.
Oh, they would have gotten a lot more than Spence.
But, like, if the value was there around the league. Yeah. Gibson to Detroit. Mrazek, a couple picks back. Kind of expected price there.
That's fine.
Detroit needed a goalie. We'll get more into Detroit at some point because
Yeah.
I have thoughts on the Yzer plan.
Well, yeah.
We'll get there though.
Yep.
Again, Declan Chisholm to Washington for Chase Prisky, basically in that pick swap. I mean, Washington just seems to stockpile just like under the radar decent players. I don't really know what Minnesota's doing here, but
they've got good defensemen.
They do. They have some good forwards too.
Yes.
It's kind of scrolling through cap wages, looking at the transactions for all the trades. I think that brings us to one of the doozies, maybe the doozy.
Okay.
Did you think I skipped? Well,
I'm wondering. We'll see.
Involves Vegas. This trade.
Oh, okay. That's not where I was headed. But that's fine.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going chronologically here.
Okay.
You were sleeping. Again, this is why it was a good thing I was on the West Coast here. Vegas acquired Jeremy Lauzon and Colton Sissons with salary retention for Sissons in exchange for Nick Hague and a third-round pick.
By the way, this isn't a trade that I wanted to be awake for.
Well, maybe not the trade, but then the subsequent contract that Nashville signed Nick Hague to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 years, $5.5 million.
I said privately, and I'll say it publicly at this point, that from a team perspective might be one of the top 5 worst contracts I've ever seen given out.
Did you see the quote from Barry Trotz?
No.
I want to be clear, I'm paraphrasing here. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but it was pretty much along the lines of, well, yeah, we're paying him for what his role is going to be on our team.
That's not a good way to do business.
No.
And his role probably shouldn't be that on their team either.
That's the bigger issue. Well,
they're both issues.
That's the biggest issue that led to another big issue, the contract. But yeah, I have a buddy that's a Nashville Predators fan, which tough for him. He's not super into it, but he likes to follow it, and he's always asking me what does this mean? What do you think of that? And this was a tough one to kind of say, like, yeah, I have no idea of what they're doing.
I'd argue Lizotte is equal, if not better, than Nick Hague.
Yep. I would too.
At a better price.
Yes.
Colton Sissons is not a superstar, but he's a solid.
Well, there was retention on his salary.
Yes. An already low salary with retention for a decent, like, third line center. Maybe fourth line, but like.
Yeah.
And then you decide to give that contract to Hague, which good for Nick Hague for getting that contract.
Oh yeah.
Maybe I'm proved wrong in a couple of years, but
I hope so. I would say anytime we, I guess, talk badly about a player, I hope we're wrong.
Yeah, I would love to see him live up and actually that become a value for Nashville, so he can get a bigger contract next time.
Yep.
But just the decision-making process and the thought process there, again, I would say I've been doing this since 2018, 2019, depending on how, like, I didn't full-on go in 2018. So 6-7 years, this might be in my top 5, like, worst contracts I've ever seen.
Yeah. It's definitely up there. I can think of some recently. Like, we were given Chicago a bit of airtime, I guess you could say, for like the 1 year, $4 million to Foligno and Perry. But in a sense, like, there's a way to justify that for them. This doesn't make any sense from Nashville's perspective.
There's contracts that I can disagree with, but rationalize the thought process. This one, I can't rationalize the thought process. And further, so I ran RFAs for our projections.
Yep.
I had, out of curiosity, set the parameters on Hague, like change the bounds so to allow higher cap hit percentages included in our sample, basically. And I was not getting outputs that much hot. Like, I just couldn't get outputs that justified anywhere near this number. And that's the biggest, like, what's Nashville seeing that we're not seeing type thing.
And to be clear, so our projection was 2 years at about 2.6.
Yeah, and it was, I'm not going to say a struggle to get there, but like,
I remember him being one where originally you had him lower, and I said it needs to go higher.
And I said I can't really do that. Like, I'm struggling to do that, and we got there by increasing bounds, but like, I
4 by 5.5 is
again, usually there's at least a comparable in our sample that, like, okay, sure. I don't think that existed.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I could get one if I tried. Tarasenko to the from the Red Wings to Minnesota for basically a dump. Fine.
So at that point, I feel like Minnesota kind of knew, all right, we're not bringing in a bigger name free agent. because at the time it was kind of like, why would they do that? They should be trying to sign someone. I think they kind of knew they would not be signing someone.
Besser probably was that name that.
Yeah. So ultimately, like, fine to do that.
Then the big Toronto trade. Matthias Maccelli from Utah for a 3rd-round pick.
That's I love it for Toronto. Just fell out of favor in Utah. Smaller forward. I wouldn't have moved him for a 3rd, but I think just the situation kind of ultimately led to that. I don't think they were going to get much more. Similar to, well, Spence didn't fall out of favor with the Kings, but was kind of going to be kept in a smaller role.
We'll get to the Kings.
Okay. Well, I'm just
but
comparing,
yes.
like,
Yes.
you kind of limit what a return's going to
Yeah.
be when you do that with a player.
Yeah, I think the trade's fine. I maybe am not quite as high on Maccelli as, I don't know. I think a 3rd's fine. Whatever.
You're getting a middle 6 winger.
Okay, so now, not sarcastically, the big Toronto trade. Mitch Marner, they end up working out this sign and trade after weeks of saying, no, this would never happen. They get Nick. Is he a Wah?
I believe
think
so.
he's Nick Wah,
Yes.
back from Vegas. Toronto does well here to actually get something of value, because usually these things are like a 3rd, 4th round pick. Nick Wah's a very good 3rd-line center.
Yes. There was a lot of talk around tampering. I don't know how much of that you saw.
Oh, I saw it. Yeah. Feels like it almost turned into blackmail.
Yes. Which to me is like, okay, what's worse if you're the league? But whatever. It's fun. I like it because, I don't know, the more that happens, the more fun I have talking about it. He's a good 3C, like you said. I think really their 3rd line could be much better, or I guess more so what I'm thinking is their bottom 6. So hopefully, and they've still got a little space to work with. They could add a little bit more, but you might be able to see the Nick Waugh, Scott Lawtons instead of the David Kampf. Ryan Reeves was already sent down, but those are kind of the old moves that didn't quite work in the way Toronto wanted them to. And I think now they're starting to acquire a little bit more depth that will be put in the correct spot in the lineup.
Ironically, they're still trying to seemingly move David Kampf out. But
and Ryan Reeves.
That's a different discussion.
Yeah.
Contract of Marner comes in a little under projection, but in tax-free Nevada, basically in line with our market value projection. We do show kind of the tax situation, how that impacts our projection. So not really. Basically, Marner gets the same contract, exact same contract Mikko Rantanen got, which makes sense when all said and done.
Yep. Also in a no state income tax state.
Very much the exact same contract, net-wise, gross-wise, everything. Carolina goalie Depke and Primo, fine. Boston did Edmonton a favor, taking Victor Arvidsson off Edmonton's books. They gave up a 5th-round pick to do so as well, which Minnesota got Tarasenko for nothing. Not that I'm going to get too hung up here on a 5th-round pick because it's not that great of value, but Boston kind of doing that, I don't know. It seems a little like if Tarasenko goes for nothing, I think those are basically the same player. They're not the same player, but like they're the same player.
Yeah. I guess I don't disagree with that necessarily. As far as the fit, I don't mind it for Boston. but comparing the two trades, I get what you mean.
Yeah, Arvinton's fine. He's third line probably in Boston, which they're not going to be competing. Maybe second.
Yeah.
Whatever. Interesting one. Zach Bolduc to Montreal for Logan Mailloux.
Yeah. I
Prospect
love
swap.
that. Love that for Montreal.
One's NHL ready.
Well, one played in the NHL
Yeah.
last year and was good.
Yeah.
And then one is maybe NHL ready.
Yeah.
And we don't know how good he's going to be.
The one thing in St. Louis's favor is getting a young right shot defenseman is definitely more valuable than in a vacuum than a winger.
It's difficult.
So like this could be something that this could be a win-win for both teams potentially. Interesting. Montreal, like we already laid out, already are a little light on the right side. Get a little lighter, but
yeah, but you make the Dobson trade, you pretty much have, at least as far as minutes, you have a top four. You have Reinbacher
exactly.
coming.
I get it. I get it.
They needed to add up front. Bolduc's a quality player and young still. Potential there. So I like it for them.
Sabres send Sam Lafferty back to Chicago for a 6th round pick. Chicago a couple stops ago for Lafferty.
Yep.
Pure capped up move. Pittsburgh sending Alex Nedeljkovic to San Jose for a 3rd round pick.
That's fine.
We had talked about in one of our preview episodes that San Jose probably should be in for a goalie. I think I connected Jake Allen to them, so
they'll trade him for a 1 next year.
Yeah. No, probably not a 1.
Not a 1, but maybe they'll upgrade the 3 to a 2. Maybe.
Yeah. But they certainly needed another veteran type guy to pair with Askarov.
Yes.
At least, if not even another goalie on top of that. So another big sign and trade. Carolina and the Rangers get together. Carolina acquires K'Andre Miller, sign him immediately to he's technically signed with the Rangers to an 8-year, $7.5 million contract. Carolina sends a 1st, 2nd, and Scott Morrow to the Rangers. So Carolina clearly believes in K'Andre Miller.
Yep.
Carolina's a pretty smartly run organization. So you would think that if them being high on K'Andre Miller, it's probably a pretty good sign.
Yes. I think he's shown he can be a good player. There's some Rangers fans that I think soured on him a little bit. But a lot of Rangers fans soured on the entire defense and even the forwards. So I don't know. I like the bet. And this is another situation, too, where look around the league at the moves that have happened and other contracts that have been signed. This one feels great.
Yeah.
I won't say great. I don't want to make it sound like it was a huge deal for the team or something, but just value-wise in the trade, what the contract ended up being, everything seemed pretty fair there. He's a top 4 defenseman.
Yeah, this has potential in a couple of years to look back and be like, yeah, Carolina's got really good value on that contract. He should be a really good fit with Carolina's style of play, like really good skater, really good at that's kind of the way Carolina comes at you is they pressure the puck and they're up the ice quick. Like that should work really well with his strengths. So should be a really good fit on the ice. Be interesting if he plays on the 1st pair with Slavin or 2nd pair with I don't even know who Carolina Chatfield. Probably not.
Their defense looks a lot different now.
Because they have Gostisbehere, Walker, Chatfield, Slavin, Miller, and Mike Riley
Alexander Nikishin
and
will
Nikishin.
probably get a good look, potentially even in the top 4
I don't
as
know
a
if,
right shot.
yeah.
Oh, no, he's a left shot. Sorry.
Okay, I thought he was a right.
So did I.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting. Someone's playing on their offside.
Very clearly, yeah.
Could be Miller.
Could be. Very well could be. I would not be putting Nikishin with Miller, so
Yeah.
Nikishin with Chatfield feels like that makes sense, and then Miller with Slavin would make sense, and then keep Walker and Gostisbehere together with Mike Riley as your 7th.
Yep.
That makes sense to me. Playing with Slavin will also give Miller a little bit of room to be free,
Yeah.
which might also benefit him a lot. Post in New York, I think that he at times had to be the defensively responsible one.
Yep.
When he was playing with Trouba and even Adam Fox, who's very, very good, but also is very offensive.
Yes.
Final trade, Thomas Borderlow from the Sharks to New Jersey for Shane Bowers. My prospect swap, Borderloo seems a little bit more likely to become something, but both at this point have kind of told around that I wouldn't be expecting too much from them either.
Right.
Well, let's get into some July 1st madness, unless you got another.
I think I have one more trade.
Did I miss something?
Maybe it's just too far down.
Maybe went too far back. Yeah, go ahead.
Trevor Zegras.
Yeah, so there were 2 that I skipped, that I kind of cut off and started with Peterka. Zegras and then Evander Kane as well. Maybe we'll
We could do Kane quick. Kane to Vancouver
for I think a 4th. Fine, but then I have questions on if Vancouver should use that cap space differently.
Yes. They should have.
Yeah, especially seeing what P.S. Suter ended up getting elsewhere.
Yep. And then good for Edmonton to clear that money. Zegras, been saying for a while now, if you're a longtime listener of the Max Term podcast, that his value was declining. He ultimately wasn't playing up to expectation. I think some people kind of knew a return like this might be the case. I think there were also a lot of people who were shocked that that's all Anaheim could get. And I think Anaheim kind of held on to him a little bit too long. So they get Ryan Poehling, good bottom 6 center.
Yeah.
Don't want to downplay that at all. He's a good player. And a 2nd round pick and a 4th round pick. So some decent assets there. It's just at one point Zegras was the next best 1C in the league, and then 2C, and then he's on the wing. So not great asset management from Anaheim, even though what he is now, fine return. For the Flyers, I actually love that trade.
Yeah.
They are one team I think acquiring Zegras makes a lot of sense. And what that return is kind of, if it doesn't work, you're not hurt about that return.
Yeah, they have wingers. They have wingers. They have lots of wingers. Like, he might be playing center for them, which honestly is probably a good idea, because if you're the Flyers, you want to see if that's a possibility. If he works out with some of your, like, they do have defensively responsible, good 2-way wingers kind of in their organization. Tibbet, Forrester, those 2 guys come to Konecny, but Konecny should be on the top line, shouldn't probably necessarily. But there's enough guys there that you can maybe plug Zegras in between a couple. or you could go full offensive fun and put him with Michikov.
That's what they should do.
How about Michikov, Zegras, and we'll put Tyson Forrester to add some defensive responsibility there.
That's fine.
But he can also score goals.
I did see something. I don't know the exact details of it. I think Forster is going to be out for a little while.
Yeah, well.
But in general, like, yes, and that idea makes sense. Pretty much for Philly, it's hope he just needed a change of scenery, which is very possible.
Yeah. The one thing that I'm going to get out ahead of, because I was going to point out, this was one of the first points I was going to make, is why Anaheim trade him. I'm just going to put out there, his qualifying offer next year is going to be big.
Yeah.
There's a very good chance that he does not get that unless he really takes a step forward in Philly. So
Yeah,
he can still stay with the Flyers for a different contract, but I highly doubt Anaheim would have qualified him, making him an unrestricted free agent, able to talk to anyone. And we'll see what happens with Philadelphia. But I think as a Flyer fan, if you're a Flyer fan listening, you probably should prepare yourself as well that this could be a one and done and lose him for nothing. Which the return you gave up, fine. It's probably worth the gamble, but like, just assuming he's a long-term piece, I wouldn't.
qualifying offers 575. Not terrible.
Not terrible, but that's also a lot for if he, at best like a middle six winger. If that's the best he can be, that's a pretty hefty price tag for that. We'll see. I don't think he gets it in Anaheim though, which is why they make this trade now.
Yeah. He also pretty quickly was falling out of the top 6 there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, might as well just put a couple more trades out there and then just wrap this episode and do the signing recap in a second. Couple more minor trades. One involves one of your guys. So one of the here, we'll just go to the one involving your guy. Columbus gets a 5th round pick from Florida for Daniil Tarasov. He's one of your guys.
Kinda.
One of your other guys got a real nice contract. We'll get into that in the next episode.
Yep. Not necessarily a goalie I would have targeted. I'm not going to say Florida doesn't know what they're doing. There was a connection that came out. I believe it was Bobrovsky looked up to Tarasov's dad as a role model, pretty much, another good Russian goalie or goalie coach. Okay, cool. Good story. Also, I will say it's possible he is just better with Florida than he was with Columbus. We'll see. But ultimately, free agency, not a ton of great options out there. You give up a 5th, that's fine.
Yeah, if worst case he's your backup for a couple years and then you move on for Florida, fine.
Well, he could. Again, we like to see all players do well. He could be terrible next year, and okay, you gave up a 5th. You can not keep him. Find a new backup.
Yeah. Try again.
This is very low risk.
Yeah, and for Florida, it makes sense because there is not the pressure to come in and be the one. They could use someone a little bit younger to, again, I'm not saying that he's the long-term solution by any means, but I'm not saying he can't be either, or at least maybe in a 1A-B situation in a couple years when Bobrovsky probably hangs it up. Like, it's...
Maybe you take 5-6 extra games off of Bobrovsky in the regular season now that he's 37.
I think he's older than that.
38. Point being, though, your franchise goalie is getting a lot older. So maybe having a younger goalie in there still to take a few extra games each year. is a smart thing.
Will be 37 to start the next season.
Okay.
36 now, but will be 37. Also, going into the last year of his contract,
Yeah.
I don't imagine that's going to be much of an issue to get an extension there.
Probably not.
But it is a factor.
Yes.
Final trade, and this could be a bigger discussion around things, but final trade that kind of happened, Freddie Gaudreau to Seattle for a 4th round pick. Like
Fine.
the return's fine. My bigger thing is Seattle had cap space, cleared some cap space, and yet
brought in more of what they already had,
and seemingly are okay trading Jared McCann.
Yeah.
Yes. So Gaudreau, fine. He's a fine role player for a team. Absolutely. 4th round pick for him might even be a little steep, but like once we get past like 2nd, 3rd round, I really don't get hung that up on the pick round.
Yeah.
It's just these, like, they bring Mason Marchment. Great idea.
Kind of.
Yeah.
In a way, it's
a little bit of an upgrade on what they have, but not fully there.
I would argue you're acquiring a good player, but it's still similar level to what you have an abundance of.
Then they go and get Gaudreau. And then next episode, we'll talk about free agent signings. And again, they've got McCann available.
Supposedly.
But yeah. Regardless, like,
they need more elite offense, and the player who's closest to being elite on that team
might be available for trade.
Yeah. Potentially on the block.
And they make savvy moves, moving off Andre Burakovsky, bring in Veleno, buying out Veleno at a cheap cost to clear almost $5 million, in cap space. And then they go and use it on players that they don't need more of.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not great.
No, definitely a different path that they went down versus Vegas.
Yeah. Hopefully the Atlanta Thrashers 3.0 choose a different path.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3.0, 2.0, I think 3.0. Well, they're Atlanta Flames, then the Thrashers.
Houston could be next.
It'll be Atlanta next.
Probably.
I'm not reporting anything at the end of this episode here, but I am.
They also seem to be the most ready.
Yeah. The NHL is expanding. Let's be very clear about that. They're going to end up at 36 teams very soon. I think those are our trades. We're almost an hour in, so I don't think you feel, as a listener, want to listen to us talk for another hour, so you'll have to wait a few more days for our free agent recap. We appreciate you listening. Max Turn Podcast available on all major podcast platforms. Content including contract projections for those still outstanding available on X, Blue Sky, Threads, at AFP Analytics. Buy me a coffee through our link tree if you feel inclined to provide some financial support. Should have mentioned earlier, 10% of proceeds at the end of the offseason will be donated to local charity Rochester Emergency Veterinary Service. And with that, we appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you next time.